Hi all, and welcome to my first stream. So, a couple of weeks ago, I made a contest asking what should be the topic of my first stream. So the winner was how does flying without passengers and even cargo look like? So starting from the very beginning, if we're doing a flight without the passengers or cargo, that's when we call it a ferry flight. So does it happen often? That's hard to answer. The question is not that simple because that's all depending of the type of airline you're flying. If you're flying for the scheduled regular airline like British Airways, Ryanair, or whatsoever, you will have less ferry flights because those airlines will try to sell tickets from A to B and then from B to A, and they try to avoid ferry flights as it's generating unnecessary cost to them. But yeah, it will happen. It will still happen. But if you're flying for charter airline like Jet2, SmartWings, Enter, whatsoever, it will happen more often. It's not that unusual to see a ferry flight in your roster. For instance, if they have airplane that is based in London and they sell a flight from Manchester to Malaga, they have to reposition their empty airplane down to Manchester before the flight, and then after the flight they will have to bring it all the way back from Malaga to London. So you have two ferry flights within 3 sectors. My personal experience when I was flying for Enter Air, it was like every 5th or 6th flight was a ferry flight. But during my 3 years in Ryanair, I had maybe 3 or 4 ferry flights. They still happen, of course, they still happen because you need to bring sometimes airplane to maintenance or from maintenance, and if they starting of ending up summer season, they have to reposition some planes as well. So then, how does it feel to fly a ferry flight? Is it really that different? I would say yes, it is. It is a lot. But before we start, I will show you this short video which I took on the ferry flight a couple of years ago. So as you see, it looks at least unusual to see the airplane that is empty inside. There's no crew, no passengers, just 2 pilots on board. Sometimes we had a flight, we had a cabin crew as well on board, but most of the ferry flights, at least in regular airline, it was fully empty. So there are a lot of differences between ferry flight and a full flight. But to give you these differences, I will focus on 737-800 as an example. So the first and the biggest difference is performance, obviously. So let's start from the very beginning. We are on the ground, on the apron, and we are just about to depart. So if you consider the takeoff performance, I made some calculations on the Boeing application. And as you can see on the right side, we have 2 calculations. The top one is a ferry flight and the bottom one is a full flight. So regarding the takeoff speeds, you can see that the ferry flight will have a rotation speeds of 116 knots, while the full flight is 146. That's 30 knots difference. It's massive difference actually. But if you take a look on the distances, you can see that the minimum distance, it's all the same conditions, same airport, same runway. And if you take a look on the distances, the empty needs 1200 meters to depart, and the full one needs 2400. And as you can see on the graph, it's almost the double. It's actually the double. So before we move on to cruise, I made a short video showing you the difference to compare it. How does it look, ferry and full? So the top one again is a ferry flight, and the bottom one is a full flight. The top one we did, I think, I'm sure, it's departure from Corfu, and we're flying to Tel Aviv, so it's like 1 hour 30, 2 hours, and that's a ferry flight. So airplane was 41 tons, we had like 4 or 5 tons of fuel, that's 45, 46 tons. And the bottom one is departure from Fuerteventura, and we're flying to Poland, so that's 5 hours 30, and that means we had full of passengers, full of cargo, and about 15 tons of fuel. So that brought the airplane almost to maximum takeoff weight. So the top one is 45 tons, the bottom one is about 77, 78 tons. So as we're watching, take a look at the difference, the acceleration speed, the takeoff distance required, and the pitch attitude after takeoff. And just to let you know, the both videos are synchronized to the moment we press the toga button. So, as you saw on the videos, the ferry flight is just like seconds. It's accelerating like a sports car or something. And the full flight on the bottom, on the other hand, is just rolling and rolling and rolling, and she doesn't want to fly. It takes ages to get airborne. So once we get airborne, the things are different. As you saw, the empty one is pitching up like almost 20 degrees, while the full one is about 10 to 15. That means that we'll climb to the cruising altitude longer as well. So if we're flying a full flight, so full 737 needs about 26 to 28 minutes to climb to flight level 380. And on the other hand, the empty one will need 21 to 23, maybe 24 minutes. That's a big difference as well. And once we get to the cruising altitude, that's a bit different as well. So the biggest difference is the fuel consumption, obviously, as the ferry flight doesn't need so much. So I've prepared 2 flight plans. The first flight plan, actually it's the same flight plan, same route, same day, same weather, and same airplane. The first you'll see, it's the empty flight. So that's the ferry flight. You see it needs 2 hours 15 minutes, and we will need about 4,900 kilograms of fuel, and this is giving us average fuel consumption at 2,200 kilograms per hour. The second one, you can see, that's the full flight. So the full flight, as you see, we need 5,700. And almost the same flight time. It's like 3 minutes longer, so I just leave it. And the fuel consumption is 2,500. That's a lot of difference. So regarding this fuel consumption, it's especially making a difference on the longer flights. So let's say if you take an empty airplane, you can easily fly it down from Seattle to Europe on one fuel tank. As you see on the screenshot, that's actually last delivery of the 737NG. It flew straight from Seattle on the west coast of the US, and it flew all the way to Glasgow without the fuel stops. So another thing on the cruising level is a speed range. So as you can see, the ferry flight at the cruising level will have the difference between maximum speed and minimum speed about 40 to 50 knots, while the same level with a full flight in the same conditions, we have very narrow speed range. You see that every turbulence or speed increase or decrease can bring you to either overspeed or underspeed. So this is called a coffin corner, and we can talk about that one on the other stream as well. So once we fly towards the top of descent, the things will get different as well. So let's say we're still flying on flight level 380. And if we're flying a full flight, we'll need to start to descend in about 110 to 120 nautical miles away from the touchdown point. But if we're flying a ferry flight, it will take about 85 to 100 miles of descent before the touchdown point. Obviously, the full flight has a lot more of inertia and energy that you have to lose. So talking about the energy and the energy management on the approach, obviously it's a lot different as well, because let's say you want to slow down from 270 knots down to 200. So if you're flying a full flight, let's say 62 tons airplane, so close to the maximum landing weight, it will need a lot of track miles and a lot more speed brake to lose altitude and speed. But if you're flying a ferry flight like 44-45 tons, you just put the thrust to idle and the airplane will just bring back the speed nicely. That's one of the reasons we cannot accept so many shortcuts when flying full flight. Otherwise, we can lead into the high energy approach. So before moving to landing itself, I have prepared another video. This time on the left side, you will see ferry landing, and on the right one, you will see a full landing. So on the left side, you can see the flight landing in Arlanda. That's a ferry flight. Both are 800s. And the one on the left weighs about 45 tons. And the one on the right is landing in Madeira in Portugal. And she is full of passengers and she is full of cargo as well. That means the approach speed will be way different. So while we're watching, take a look on the difference of the approach speed, how the things are happening, and just to let you know, both videos are synchronized to the moment when it's saying 50.
500. +100.
as you see on the videos, the ferry flight will happen way slower than the full flight. Even 50, 40, 30, 20, it's way slower than 50, 40, 30. So the approach speed, it's much less, it's about 20 knots difference. And as you see, the vertical speed on the ferry flight was about 600, while full flight was about 800, 850. But on the other hand, ferry flight is a bit more difficult to land because she's flying slower, so she's a bit more prone to crosswind and gusts and turbulence. And the other thing is that once you're getting close to the ground, you're entering the ground effect, and she doesn't want to touch down. She will keep flying, so you have to really push it to the ground. While the full flight, it will just slightly flare and then she will touch down herself. And talking about landing distances, obviously empty 737 will have way better performance in terms of stopping than a full one. So on the dry runway you can stop a ferry flight, so you can stop an empty airplane in less than 1000 meters easily, while the full one will need about 1500. And if you do the heavy landing in such a short distance, you will have a problem with the hot brakes. That's another issue, especially for low-cost operators. If you're doing the really short turnaround and you do the heavy landing before, sometimes we have to wait for the brakes to cool down before the next flight. Okay guys, so to summarize, how does it feel to fly ferry? Is it a lot different or harder? It's hard to say if it's more difficult or not, but it is a lot different, and both of them are actually fun to fly, as always. Okay, so thanks for watching today. All the best for you from Geneva in Switzerland. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned.